Please welcome Politico's White House correspondent and playbook co-author, Eugene Daniels, and Georgia Governor Brian Kemp.
Hello, hello, hello.
How's it going?
A little Beyonce to get the morning started. Afternoon, morning, where are we at? I have it in my rider that I have to walk on to a Beyonce song. Otherwise, it's over. We have Governor Kemp. Governor Kemp, thank you so much for joining today.
Glad to be here. Beyonce's not normally my walk-up song, but I'm glad to be here.
We got to get it in your repertoire. I'll talk to your team right after this. We envisioned a different conversation before Saturday, and the country has changed, it feels like, so lots to get to. First and foremost, we have a VP pick for President Trump, J.D. Vance. I'll keep it simple. What do you think?
Yeah, look, not really surprised. I mean, I think a lot of similarities to those two, to former President Trump and Senator Vance. Big difference in age, so I think that brings something to the ticket with his youth.
The first millennial vice president, possibly.
And so, I think there was a lot of really good people that former President Trump was talking about picking that were in the mix, and I think any of them would have been good picks. And I think any of those picks, the base and the party and the people here and Republicans around the country would have rallied behind that pick. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing. That's what I'm feeling anyway.
Would you have picked someone different?
Well, I probably would have had a lot of different people on the short list, but I wasn't the nominee, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think.
J.D. Vance has kind of made a switch from many years ago, right? When he wrote Hillbilly Elegy before the 2016 election, he said he was a never Trumper. He described himself as that. He texted a former roommate that Trump was America's Hitler. He called him noxious, reprehensible, other things. What do you think is behind kind of the switch up? Because it didn't just happen recently, right? This has been kind of a journey for him.
Well, you've heard a lot of people talk about on both sides of the political aisle of evolving over the years on issues and people. And, I think, you can look back at Vice President Harris's relationship with Joe Biden when they were running against each other. You notice a little bit of that. You had some of that with Trump and J.D. Vance. But I don't know Senator Vance as well as I knew some of the other folks that were in the mix, but just some of the things I've read about him and where he is policy-wise, and he seems very honest when he says he just had a change of mindset when he got to know Donald Trump. And I mean, look, that's certainly allowable in politics.
Yeah. It's clear with picking J.D. Vance that President Trump is kind of doubling down on the, people call it the MAGA agenda, as it were. That's not really your vibe. Do you think this is where the Republican Party should be going?
Well, first I would say it depends on what issues there are, because there's a lot of issues that, like, Donald Trump and I agreed on, we worked on when he was in the White House and I was early in my administration. And the party agendas and movements are always moving, and they're going to move as to what the people want. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what, former President Trump and Senator Vance have been moving to is, what they feel like people want and that will help get them elected out there. I mean, look, there's a lot of issues that, I could maybe disagree on policy on this point or that point.
Feel free to do them now.
And there's, there's a lot of people, a lot of Republicans that do that, but that's okay, right? We're supposed to be having those debates, even within our own parties, to streamline those policies and to make things better and to move the country forward. And I think it's a great opportunity for our party as Republicans, and I've said this in the past, for well over a year now. We have got a great opportunity. We need to tell people what we're for. We need to stay focused on the future and tell people why they need to vote for us. I think the biggest issue is American people and people in Georgia that I'm hearing from, they can't afford another 4 years of Joe Biden. And so it's a great opportunity for whether it's former President Trump, his nominee for Vice President J.D. Vance, or any other Republican that's out there, for us to be telling people, like, what are those issues are. I mean, we have tons of them I could talk about that we've done in Georgia over the last 2 or 3 years.
We'll get to some of that Georgia-specific stuff, but first I want to transition into talking about the shooting at the rally in Pennsylvania this weekend. Where were you when you heard the news, and I guess what was your immediate reaction?
We were actually had been traveling. Well, let's see, we had been actually at a public event. Representative Buddy Carter and myself were both on a public stage. Saturday morning down on the coast of Georgia. Marty, our First Lady, and my wife and one of our daughters were there with us. A big crowd. 100-year celebration of the Causeway going from Brunswick, Georgia over to St. Simon's Island. That was just a great celebration. Then we were traveling back to Athens to get ready to come to the convention when all of that started. So we were kind of in the middle of unpacking the car, getting in, and then we heard something happened at the rally and started watching the TV.
What was your immediate reaction to it?
Well, I mean, look, the first thing before I really knew any details was just it was a sad day for the country, regardless of who it was that this had happened to, who was getting shot at. There's just no place for that in our politics and in our country, and it's very disturbing for people that were there. And then obviously knowing the details now, the loss of life, our thoughts and prayers certainly go out to that family. A guy that was an everyday hero as a volunteer firefighter literally died an American hero protecting his family. You had two other people that were injured that are still recovering, and then by the grace of God, Donald Trump is here, and because it could have been just within a couple inches of him not being here. I would hate to think what we'd be going through right now in our country if that had happened. So I'm very grateful in spite of the tragic events that he survived. And I think it's a great opportunity for the country, for politicians, for people in the media, and really all Americans to say, look, regardless of what side of the political aisle we're on, regardless of, where we are on policy, we need to be respectful of one another. We need to get back to the days of having, civil discourse in our politics and not trying to demonize the other side. It's fine to go after people on issues, and politics is a tough business, and it's like tackle football, it's a contact sport, and you're going to have some of that. But there's ways to do that in a proper way without inciting violence and really bad things happening.
I mean, do you feel like this could be a wake-up call for a lot of Americans? I think over the last few days we've seen maybe that isn't the case, and are you worried that it's going to get worse?
Well, I think it certainly could be. Do I think it's going to just like immediately change? Yeah. I don't. I mean, look, we have been through a really tough time in this country. When you think, and I know, like I've been in the middle of the circular firing squad, not literally, but figuratively. With people in my own party mad at me, the other side mad at me, the national media on me, the local media on me, and so I understand a little bit about this, but it has been a polarizing time in our country for a lot of reasons. One of them is the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic politics, the personalities that we've had running in politics, and that can be on both sides of the aisle. So I think there's an opportunity to kind of reset, if you will, a little bit. But also we've got to keep in mind we have a presidential race going on, and it is a real fight, and both sides are going to fight, and we just need to do that in the right kind of way, and hopefully we'll see that.
Yeah, I mean, do you think the Trump and Biden campaigns need to adjust how they talk about their opponents? Obviously, you talked about that fight. They have to figure out how to talk about the other person. But
well, I think they will, and I think they'll try to. But I also think, people like me, political junkies, and the base of the parties on the right and the left. A lot of people that are here at the convention this week.
In this room.
Well, yeah, people that'll be at the convention in Chicago, and then the media. Like we have to have a little grace. If somebody's saying in the crosshairs or it's going to be a bloodbath, we really need to make sure we understand the context they're talking about. And if somebody makes a slip of the tongue that may be appropriate sometimes but wouldn't be after a shooting, like we need to be forgiving of that. And if they do it 2 or 3 times in a row and continue to double down, then call them out. But I think we just need to be mindful that at the end of the day, we're all Americans. We're all fighting for the betterment of our country. And that's really what the next 4 or 5 months is going to be like.
Yeah, and I guess on that point, Senator Vance said that the rhetoric from the Biden campaign, quote, directly led to the shooting. He talked about President Biden on a call with donors and what he said. Do you agree with that assessment? Is that kind of talk helpful?
I wouldn't.
No.
Well, I personally don't think I would have made that comment. I think you can look at a lot of things that have been said on the other side that has really upset and maybe made the rhetoric where people really had a hatred for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Of course, I think you could probably look for instances of that on the right, on the Democrats. And I think this is where it's an opportunity. I don't know. I just feel like people out there are really craving a workhorse, not a show horse. And I think it's an opportunity for Republicans to really show people we're going to be workhorses. And this is the policy that's going to get us there to do that. And I believe that would move the people in the middle that you need to win states like Georgia, states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and the Virginia, North Carolinas of the world into our column.
Yeah, President Trump's team has talked about his tone and that it's changing. He said himself that he ripped up his speech and it's going to be more conciliatory. Then he immediately started talking about January 6th again. And so I guess, do you think that for him that the conciliatory, different tone, the unity tone can actually last? You've had some tussles with him over the years.
Well, I think, one thing about Donald Trump, you don't have to really worry about what he's thinking or, where he is on a lot of things. He's going to tell people that. A lot of people really like him because he is a fighter. He's fought hard for his position. I think a lot of people out there feel like, he was fighting for them when maybe other people wouldn't. And I have that feeling in a lot of ways myself. When I was running for re-election, I was telling people at the end of every bus tour stop, who's been fighting for you over the last 3 years? Who was fighting to get your kids back in the classroom after the pandemic? Who was fighting to get your business opened up? Who was fighting to keep your community safe out there? And I think that's what people want. That being said, I do think it's a great opportunity for the former president in his speech, really to reach a segment of people that maybe not have liked him all that much, just by tone alone, being statesmanly and having, really a lot of grace and thanks for what he survived over the weekend.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about the security situation in Pennsylvania at that rally. There have been calls on the right for the Secret Service director to resign or be fired. Do you think that President Biden should accept their resignation or fire her?
Well, I think if she offered the resignation, I think he would certainly accept it.
But do you think he should fire her?
Well, I wouldn't want to say that at this point, not knowing more than I know. Mm-hmm. I know there's some very respectful people that have called for the resignation. I've certainly seen things that to me are very troubling, but I'm also trying not to move too quickly. I'm a governor. I'm not a member of Congress. I'm not on, I don't have oversight of, that part of the federal government. I do think there needs to be a transparent, bipartisan review and investigation of exactly what happened to really answer the questions of, what did happen, how that person was allowed to get that close, why that individual wasn't taken out before shots were fired. So, there's definitely a lot of questions, a lot of troubling things. But, one of the things I try to do when I make really tough decisions like that is make sure I have all the information, and I don't have that as the governor of Georgia.
That's so interesting that a politician would wait for information before making a decision or determination. It's a breath of fresh air.
Well, I think you got to be very careful right now what we're saying.
Yeah.
Because you start leading people to thinking one thing, and then you find out something else is different. And it's not always good to have people on a yo-yo like that. I think it's And listen, I wish they'd come out and say more right now about what happened. I think this, deafening tone that they have of not sharing information, and maybe they have a good reason for doing that, and I'll, give them the benefit of the doubt. But at some point relatively soon, I mean, there's some pretty basic questions that I think could be answered, but I would really leave it to our members of Congress, and I think it would be a good thing for the country if you had people like Chuck Schumer and Speaker Johnson go out there and find some people that truly would work in a bipartisan manner to get the facts and to find out what happened to make sure this never happens again.
Congressman Jim Jordan is going to be here later with my colleague Rachel Bade, so they will be getting into that. You should stick around. You have become one of the most outspoken critics of the former president. You kind of speak your mind. You're from the South. What concerns, do you still have concerns about him and whether as a candidate or as a president?
Oh, yeah.
What are they?
Concerns?
Yeah.
How much time we got?
We have 19 minutes and 45 seconds.
All right. Well, listen, I do have concerns. I mean, look, anybody that watched the debate, that was troubling to me. I think it's very sad. I also have, watched some of the public appearances that he's made recently.
President Trump.
Oh, President Trump.
Former president. No worries. We can.
All right, restate that question. Sorry, I was focused on something.
Yeah, we'll pretend like they didn't see it.
You said I've been very outspoken.
You
I've
do.
been outspoken against President Biden.
About everybody.
I hadn't said a whole lot about.
Yeah, not yet.
Trump.
In the past, you have. What concerns do you still have, or do you have concerns about him as a candidate, President Trump, or as a actual president, as a candidate or president?
Well, listen.
And how he operates.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know how he's going to operate. He's the nominee. That's, the people have spoken for him on the Republican side of the aisle. I've said all along I was going to support the ticket. I haven't certainly agreed with everything that President Trump did. And I don't know if y'all heard this, but he also didn't agree with some of the things that I've done over the years. But that's okay in politics. I think, my focus right now is on the future. And I've been pretty pointed at saying over the last year, really speaking to him and all the other people that were running for the Republican nomination, is like, we got to quit looking in the rearview mirror. We got to be forward thinking. We got to tell people what we're for, and we got to win. Yeah. You can't govern if you don't win. You could look at what's happening right now. All of this, in my eyes, in some ways, is our own fault because we let Joe Biden win that race. We shouldn't have done that, and we have opportunity to, in my opinion, right that wrong. And we've been through that process to figure out who our nominee would be. Now we got our vice presidential nominee, and I think you'll see Republicans rallying to really the policies that Donald Trump pushed when he was in office, having a hell of a lot better border security than we have right now. Making sure that we have a strong economy and putting America first from an economic perspective. For every regulation they pass, they got to get rid of 2 or 3 or 4 streamlining processes and just a lot of other things that they did to make the country strong, rebuilding the military and many other things. And so, that's why I'm supporting the ticket, and that's why, we're going to work really hard to hold Georgia in 2024.
Yeah, I guess, you mentioned the primary, there were a lot of centrist Republicans, kind of in your ilk, that were running. One of the questions that I've heard people have is that the centrists failed Republicans by not stopping President Trump from becoming the nominee once again, considering all of the things that you and him disagree on, and where a lot of the centrist Democrats disagree with him on.
Well, what would you think we disagree on?
The election, for one, probably a lot of his foreign policy pronouncements, the way that he operates.
Yeah, okay. Well,
that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. But, I mean, I think, like, a lot of the people that run in the, you call them centrists. I mean, there was, quite honestly, a lot of conservatives that were running. A few moderates in the race. Mm-hmm. But I think, most of the people that at least stuck around at the end of the race were running as pretty conservative Republicans. I mean,
but I guess if you compare it to the America First MAGA movement, the Overton window has shifted quite a bit.
Well, I think, and also some people's definition of a conservative Republican is different than a MAGA Republican, which is fine. We can have those debates, and I think you'll see a lot of those debates happen even after Donald Trump's elected president when it comes to foreign policy, tariffs, regulation, tax environment. You're seeing, people in Washington say different things right now that, others may not agree with, and that's part of politics. When you get elected, you gotta, bring coalitions together to get things done. And I think, President Trump has shown the ability to do that in the past, and I think he'll be able to do that in the future. And I think having somebody like J.D. Vance as on the ticket and a member of the United States Senate would certainly help him legislatively.
You just said when he's elected. It sounds like you feel like this election's a done deal.
Well, I want to be confident, but not overconfident.
Okay.
I do not.
You still like President Biden?
I absolutely do not think this is a done deal. I think, I feel good about the unity that's happening. I feel good about the excitement that people have, coming off of the debate, coming off of really just all the things that happened last weekend, but also know that like 4 or 5 months is an eternity in politics. And a lot of things can happen, a lot of things can change, and the best advice that I would give them, having just run for re-election against a really tough opponent and kind of a national tight race that a lot of money was raised in, is the best thing you can do is think about winning the day. Win today, get up tomorrow, try to win that day, win the next day, and just do that until election day at 7 p.m. or whenever the polls close. And, then you can let the chips fall where they may. But I do not think Republicans need to be getting overconfident right now. This is going to be a dogfight the rest of the way.
Yeah. Project 2025 has kind of garnered, over the last couple of weeks, a lot of attention. It's been around for a bit. It's kind of really entered the zeitgeist at this point. Many Democrats, many Republicans feel like it's a framework for the next Trump administration. There are, I think a lot of people say, some quite extreme things in there that they're worried about. Do you think people have a right to be concerned about kind of the extremist policies that are within that agenda?
Well, my view on that is, that's not the Trump campaign's agenda. You can, try to tie that
but
to
a lot
him.
of the people who put it together
and look,
work for
I
him
get
and
that.
will work from him.
I get that, but I have a lot of my supporters that have different ideas on policy than I do, and they may put things out there and want you to sign this pledge and that pledge. To me, the Democrats jumped on this, trying to get their base excited about being against something that would help them beat Donald Trump. And quite honestly, I think they're just trying to distract from the issues that they have with their candidate and Joe Biden. And, Americans every single day, when they go to the grocery store, when they go to the gas pump, when they're paying their insurance, they're looking at interest rates. All of that has gone up. They're looking at the disaster at the border, the disastrous pullout of Afghanistan, our standing in the world, what's happening in whether it's Ukraine or in Israel or Gaza. And, they're trying to distract from that because they do not have a good record to run on. And so I think it's incumbent on Republicans to say, look, this is what we're for. There's a party platform right now that, Trump's been getting criticized because it's so small, but
and it was in all caps.
Yeah, well, all caps, but that's what he put out there.
Yeah.
But everybody's trying to tie him to Project 25. So, if I'm him, if I'm other Republicans running for office, I'm not worried about some report that's out there. I'm telling people what I'm going to be for, and I think that's what you'll hear from former President Trump this week.
But do you have any issues with what's in Project 2025? Because I hear what you're saying that,
Well, look, I have not looked at all. It's like 600 and something
900
pages. Yes, I have not read
You're
the
busy.
report. I apologize. I have not read the report. But, I don't. I appreciate a lot of conservatives that are working on different things around the country and different policy ideas. But, I don't really know what all is in that report. But I just know as a candidate, when I was running for governor for the first time and for the re-elect, I was telling people every day what I was for. And I think you'll hear that from President Trump. And I would, if he was asking me for advice, I'd tell him not to worry about what they're saying about somebody else's policy agenda and just tell people what you're for.
When was the last time you two spoke?
It's been a little while.
Just a little while. How was the conversation?
It was pointed, direct.
From both sides?
It was direct, yeah.
Senator Vance has had a lot to say about kind of a plan to purge the federal government of civil servants, replace them with lots of loyalists. That's just something that's in Project 2025. Trump picking him as VP seems to hint that these kinds of policies will find their way into a Trump-Vance administration. Do you agree with?
Well, I mean, I think that'd be a good question to ask him.
Yeah. You want to call him? You have his number.
I do not have his number. He's the one person of all the VP candidates that I really just didn't know that well.
Yeah.
Just because our paths haven't crossed that much. But look, there's a lot of frustration with federal bureaucracy. I'm one of them that's frustrated with it, and I've dealt with that, and I've dealt with a lot of partisans in the federal government at times under Democratic administrations, certainly with President Biden's administration, but also President Obama when you think about the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department and other folks that we were dealing with. So, I mean, I can understand the frustration, and I think a lot of conservatives and really a lot of center-right Republicans have, the same mindset, how long it takes something to get permitted, how often the federal government's trying to, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you, which delays you about a year. I was talking to the former Prime Minister of Australia, who's now the ambassador to the United States, and he was talking about, how quick China can build a new submarine, and they're doing it 3 times quicker than we are because of federal bureaucracy is the only reason why. And so those are the kind of things that I hope, really the Trump administration would be going after to streamline.
We don't have a ton of time, so I'm trying to get to as much as I can. Last month, the Supreme Court ruled on kind of immunity and immuning President Trump and other presidents from criminal prosecution for official acts. And I'm wondering if you think that, I guess, where do you fall on presidents having full immunity on quote unquote official acts?
Yeah, well, I don't think it gave them really full immunity.
But on official acts.
On official,
yeah.
But you also, I think there's enough in there where, committing crimes and other things in their non-official capacity, probably got it about right.
Yeah. You have talked about, and you came to our governor's summit and talked about the kind of you guys being the electric mobility capital of the world. You have been happy with the amount of money you've gotten from the different bills that President Biden has done.
No, I've been happy about the investment.
Money,
investment.
investment.
No, we're not getting the money.
Yeah,
they're giving the money to corporations.
Yes.
They could go anywhere in the country with that money. They're deciding to come to Georgia. But you got to remember, I wrote the letter to our 2 U.S. senators telling them to vote against the IRA unless they changed and leveled the playing field, because that bill was picking winners and losers. It was helping the big 3 and the union-backed automakers. And my whole point was, if you're going to do that policy-wise, just make it where it helps all of them. Make sure it's going to help Kia, that's non-union, that's in our state. Make sure it's going to help Hyundai and Rivian, which both had already announced to come to our state ever before the IRA passed. The SK battery plant in Commerce, Georgia, my predecessor, Governor Deal, announced that project in 2019, before Joe Biden was ever president. I announced the first expansion of that project with Secretary Ross, who was in the Trump administration before COVID and before IRA ever passed. So,
But you guys have benefited from those investments. So I guess my question is,
well, my point is the investments are coming to the U.S. regardless of IRA. What they did is incentivize something that didn't need incentivizing, which helped. And this is at a time where we're trying to get people to come back to work. They're paying people to stay home. They're flooding the market with more money, more spending, plus they're picking winners and losers. A good example, I drove a Kia EV9 off the line about a month and a half, 2 months ago in Georgia. That vehicle, when I drove that vehicle off the line, it did not apply for the federal tax credit. It will in January if you lease it. That's the problem with this policy. The announcements that they did last week, the election year giveaways, the hundreds of millions of dollars. One of them was they're giving $80 million to Bluebird in Georgia to build an electric bus plant. That's $200,000 per job. They're going to create 400 jobs with that new plant. $200,000 per job. I mean, that's not good policy. When these things were happening anyway in our country before IRA was ever passed.
You're term limited. And
Thank the
after,
Lord.
so obviously you're one of those politicians. Everyone kind of comes back to 2028 will be right around the corner. Would you? It sounds like you might be. Do you want to rule out a run for president?
I'm not ruling out anything.
Oh, I've heard that before.
I may come work. I may be a reporter.
Yeah, come to Politico. You can find a spot on the playbook team for you. If President Trump asked you, would you serve in the administration? If there was one?
Well, look, I would be, certainly honored to be asked. That'd have to be a very thoughtful conversation. I love my job. I got two and a half.
But you're open to it.
2.5 years to go. Well, I wouldn't even really say I'm open to it. I just said I would be honored if I was asked. But I like being in Georgia every day, not Washington, D.C. I can't imagine a job that would be better for me right now than being the governor of the great state of Georgia. We've had just an incredible, really last 5 years. We have the opportunity to continue that over the next 2.5 years, and I have a lot of work left to do. And so I'm very happy where I am.
Okay. Last question before
you could quote me on that.
Oh, somebody will. They're writing it now. Last question before the producers come and snatch us off the stage. What keeps you up at night?
Well, when we had the debate in Atlanta, it was making sure everything was going to be safe. I think that's probably, most governors worry. I don't really have one thing that just bothers me every night. I mean, things have been going pretty well in our state. There's always issues that we have to deal with, but safety and security, you just never know when something's going to happen. So I probably would say that probably more than anything is what weighs on you. We've had we just have crazy things happening every day with our men and women in law enforcement and getting those calls where, somebody's been shot or somebody's been in a wreck or somebody got killed. That's tough. It's tough on you.
Yeah. Well, Governor, I'm getting eyes from over there, so I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.